So end of ideology, right? We have seen PYQs of end of ideology. Now what we are going to do is end of ideology as a concept. What it's what it tries to mean, right? What end of ideology means. Again, what we do with every topic is start with etymology. End of ideology. Starting with etymology. End of ideology. In very simple terms, what would you say by end of ideology? You will say that ideology has lost relevance. Ideology has lost relevance. And if ideology has lost relevance, then which which thing has become relevant, right? If one thing has lost relevance, some other thing will become relevant. What is that thing which has become relevant? It is economy, right? This is what end of ideology thesis in essence means. In essence means. This is what end of ideology thesis is, right? So there have been two instances or two theses or two debates which has gone down in enriching end of ideology thesis. The first thesis or first debate had happened in Milan Conference of Liberals in 1995. 1955, 19, not 1995, but 1955. 1955 Milan Conference was the starting point of this debate of end of ideology, right? And the and the second idea which came was in 1989, Francis Fukuyama wrote this essay of end of history essay by Francis Fukuyama in 1989, just before end of Cold War and fall of USSR, just before that, right? So this essay of end of history and this conference in Milan have opened up this debate of end of ideology or end of history, right? What does end of ideology will mean? Again, I am explaining you the whole thing again. What does end of ideology mean? End of ideology in a single line means only this, that ideology has lost relevance and economy has become relevant. Why ideology has lost relevance? Because economy is more important factor now. Development is more important factor now, right? And this is what end of ideology thesis in essence mean. Across end of ideology, end of history, you will find this this to be the central idea which is present everywhere, that ideology has lost relevance. What is important right now is economy. What is relevant right now is economy. This is the central idea. This is the central idea, right? So if this is the central idea, and there have been two debates, one in Milan and second by Francis Fukuyama, right? So we'll start with the first debate, which is usually called as end of ideology. End of ideology. The second debate is end of history, end of ideology thesis of 1955, right? End of ideology thesis of 1955, whereby the primary idea is of no, not is of, but is that ideology has lost relevance. Ideology has lost relevance. What does this mean? I have just said that what does this mean is that economy has become relevant and society has become post-capitalist. Society has become post-capitalist. What does this mean? What does post-capitalism mean? Post-capitalism means that society will the central idea of a society will be that the economy is capitalist, but society is socialist. Right? Ideology has lost relevance. Economy matters, and and society became post-capitalist. What does this post-capitalist society mean? It means that society has become welfareist society. Whereby, what does post-capitalism mean? Whereby economy is capitalist and society is welfareist. Right? Economy is allowed to boom. Right? Economy is allowed to grow through capitalist means and capitalist way of market. But society is welfareist, whereby government will take taxes from economic economic players. Government will take taxes from economic players, and the money which government gathers from these players will be spent on society, betterment of society. Right? This is what post-capitalist economy means. This is what end of ideology thesis is trying to say. That ideology has lost relevance, that economy matters, and society has become post-capitalist, which means that economy is still capitalist, but society is welfareist, whereby money that is grown out of economy will be spent. A part of that money will be spent on betterment of society, for betterment of society. This is what end of ideology thesis is all about. Why this had to happen? Whereby economy should be capitalist and society should be welfareist. Why did this happen? This happened because of universal adult franchising. Right? Universal adult franchise means that everyone who is adult will be able to give vote. Right? Right? If you are 18 plus in India, you can vote. You can vote. When everyone can vote, when everyone can vote, who do you think have a bigger say in let's say elections, right? In universal adult franchise, the biggest say in elections is of poors. Why poors? Because they have the most number, right? In universal adult franchise, without poors, you cannot get to power. When you cannot get to power without poors, you start speaking language of welfare because you want to be in power. And that is why ideology has lost relevance, and politics is no longer politics of ideology. Politics is no longer politics of ideology, but politics has become politics of development. Politics of development. This is what end of ideology thesis is all about. That ideology has lost relevance. Politics has become politics of development, And why so? Because society has become post-capitalist. Why society has become post-capitalist? Because of universal adult franchise. In universal adult franchise, a system whereby if you are 18 plus, universal adult franchise means adult, though all of the adults of a country can vote. If you are 18 plus, you can vote. If all of the adults of a country can vote, who do you think will have biggest say? It will be poors, because poors are in the largest numbers. When poors are in the largest number, you will talk about welfare. So because of one first factor whereby economy is capitalist and capitalist economy is working for welfare of society, whereby part of income which has been earned by capitalist economy is being spent on society. And the second factor is universal adult franchise, or if you are 18 plus, you can vote. In this situation, whereby poors are the biggest group of people who can vote, so politics will become politics of development, and ideology will lose relevance, because through only doing good for poor people, you will get power. This is what end of ideology thesis is all about, right? There are few scholars which we are going to study one by one to understand this thesis more, right? Uh, this thesis in essence is this. In essence, this thesis means only these three words: politics of development, right? This line summarizes the end of ideology thesis in toto, whereby politics is no longer politics of development, but politics has become politics is no longer politics of ideology, but politics has become politics of development. This is complete picture of end of ideology. Now we are going to see some scholars which have spoken about end of ideology, because UPSC evaluators want a, some expertise out of you. Otherwise, this is enough. To understand end of ideology thesis, this is enough. Now we are going to start with some scholars. We'll understand some scholars. Daniel Bell. Daniel Bell is one such scholar. His book is End of Ideology. The name of his book is End of Ideology. Right. What he has said. End of Ideology. In End of Ideology, Daniel Bell has said that, right, with growth of capitalism and with growth of society, right, primary question primary question is of development, right? People will speak about development right now, right? And and who do you think who do you think work in a post capitalist society, right? It is bureaucracy and technocracy which takes nearly all decisions. Bureaucracy, if political leadership decides where we should do development, the how and why of the development is decided by bureaucracy, right? How technocracy? Because most of the money has been brought into economy by technocrats. So bureaucracy and technocracy is more important right now than political leadership, because in essence the power lies with technocrats and bureaucrats. That is why ideology has lost relevance, and primary question is of development, right? The second scholar who has talked about end of ideology is W. Rostov. W. Rostov, what does W. Rostov says? W. Rostov says that irrespective irrespective of the ideology that an society has, irrespective of political ideology, right? Irrespective of political ideology notwithstanding ideology notwithstanding economic growth happens through the same five stages, right? The same five stages. What are these five stages? The stages are five stages of economic development are: the first stage is traditional stage, whereby barter is there. Barter, a preliminary cash society is there. Then pre-takeoff stage, whereby society will get into uh, some economic activities. Then takeoff stage, where there will be a high growth. Then there will be a maturity, where there will be high growth and high savings. But in the last stage, economy will be of high consumption, because consumption is something which drives economy. This will be understood by all of the people, and economy will grow like that. So what is expected out of you? You are expected to write only this thing, that irrespective of political ideology, ideology notwithstanding, economic growth happens in all societies in the same five stages. This is all you have to understand, right? Then we are going to understand the views of Ralph. I cannot pronounce his name really well. So Dorendorf, Ralph Dorendorf, right? He has written this book, Class and Class Conflict in Industrial Society, right? In industrial society, class and class conflict in industrial society. What is industrial society? Whereby, right? In the book's name, you are finding what scholar has to say. The scholar has to say that in industrial society, class and class conflict have become irrelevant, right? Again, he will say the same thing, that he analyzed Marxist ideology, that Marxist ideology in industrial society has become irrelevant. Why it has become irrelevant? Because industrial society is now taking care of its its citizens, its residents. Industry is taking care of its residents. Therefore, ideology has become irrelevant. Industrial society is welfarist society. Welfarist society, whereby welfare of the worker in an industrial society is taken care of, right? Then another scholar is there, Galbraith. He has talked about industrial state in his book. He has talked about industrial state. Again, said the same thing. He said that power is in hands of technocrats and bureaucrats. If power is in hands of technocrats and bureaucrats, ideology is irrelevant, and politics has become irrelevant. Economy is something which matters. Then there is Lipset. Lipset in his book Political Man, Political Man has said that has understood that liberal democracy is best way of life. What does he mean by liberal democracy is best way of life? Right? What liberalism means here? Liberalism means here capitalism. What democracy means here? It is a welfareist society. Welfareist society. In democracy, which has universal adult franchise, you cannot keep you cannot keep poors out of your agendas and expect you to have power for a long term. In a democratic society, poor has to be taken care of. That is why capitalism, which produces growth, and capitalism, which gives money in hands of poor, resources in hands of poor, is the best kind of system because it takes care of both both of the players. It takes care of poor as well as rich. Rich are happy, poor are happy as well. Rich are happy because they are able to do business. Poor are happy because they are being taken care of. Right? Again, it means the same thing. Liberal democracy and post-capitalistic society is the same thing. Liberal democracy, post-capitalist society, welfareist society, liberal democracy, these all mean the same thing, right? Whereby economy is capitalistic, but society, social justice is taken care of, right? Then we'll see views of James Burnham. James Burnham, through his idea of managerial revolution. What does he mean by managerial revolution? Right? Revolution in Marxist vocabulary. Revolution in Marxist dictionary is revolution of workers revolution. Right? This is revolution in Marxist dictionary. What revolution in Marxist dictionary mean? But revolution means that decisions in post-capitalist society is in hands of managers. If decisions are in hands of managers, then anyone can become a manager, right? You just need to have business degree to become a manager, right? Now managers don't have class, managers don't have caste, managers don't have religion, managers can be from anywhere, and managers don't favor their class, caste, or religion because the primary interest of manager is to run the business more efficiently, right? This is what this is what James Burnham is trying to say. Managerial revolution, whereby there is no need of revolution and ideology has become irrelevant, right? Right. If revolution is irrelevant because if your revolution is irrelevant, then ideology of Marxism will also be relevant. Ideology of Marxism is irrelevant, right? Revolution is irrelevant. Ideology of Marxism is irrelevant. Why? Because managers who are taking decisions do not belong to a particular class, do not belong to a particular caste, do not belong to a particular religion. Their interests are to run their business more efficiently. That is it. Managerial revolution. Right? Now we have seen what end of ideology thesis essentially means. That it means that ideology is irrelevant and politics of development. Ideology and politics are relevant. Economy and development are relevant, more important. right? Now we have seen the scholars supporting the thesis. Now we are going to see the scholars who are opposing the thesis. Now we are going to see the scholars who are opposing the thesis. That is, we are going to see criticism of end of ideology thesis. Criticism of end of ideology thesis. Right? First criticism came, of course, from Marxists. Marxist criticism is there of end of ideology thesis. What does Marxists say? Marxists say that Marxists say that end of ideology ignores inequality. End of ideology ignores monopolies. End of ideology ignores social disharmony. End of ideology limits. End of ideology uh, limits man to an economic man. And end of ideology, because all of these end of ideology is propaganda. This is what Marxists say, right? Marxists say, and all these things has been said by a scholar known as Richard Titmus, right? Then another Marxist has said there is this scholar known as Ralph Miliband. Ralph Miliband has criticized James Burnham's managerial revolution, right? In his book, State in Capitalist Societies. We are going to see Ralph Miliband and his idea of state in relatively autonomous state, I guess, and we are going to see Ralph Miliband in more detail. But right now, in context of end of ideology thesis, Ralph Miliband gives criticism of James Burnham's managerial revolution in his book State in Capitalist Societies, whereby he calls managerial revolution a myth. What does he mean by managerial revolution is a myth? He means that MBA business degree is costly. Right? He's talking this in context of US, whereby average price of business degree is around $1 lakh per year, I guess. Right? It is more than that. If you're going to study business in an American university, they are going to charge you enormous amounts. So poor are not able to get to business school, business education very easily. While things like scholarship is there, but still scholarship is very limited. So business education limits to the elite, right? It is not it is not the general public who can get business education, right? So Richard Titmus and Ralph Miliband. There are other scholars. There is C.B. Macpherson. C.B. Macpherson, these are not Marxist scholar, but other scholars of other ideological point of view, whereby he calls that post-capitalist societies are inegalitarian, are unequal, inegalitarian. Inegalitarians means unequal. Then there is C.W. Mills. C.W. Mills has called end of ideology to be status quoist. Why status quoist? Because end of ideology thesis is trying to maintain domination of capitalist class, right? And then there is Alastair McIntyre. Alastair McIntyre has called end of ideology to be an ideology itself, right? Ideology of dominant capitalist class, ideology of a class which is trying to maintain its hegemony, a class which is trying to maintain its domination. This was end of ideology thesis, and this was the scholars of end of ideology thesis. We have seen criticism of end of ideology thesis as well. I hope you understood end of ideology in a nice detail, right? If end of ideology is understood, uh, we are going to start with end of history from the next lecture. I hope this was useful. I'll continue with end of history. Thank you so much. Bye bye.